All right, we are good to go.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to Smart With Your Money Live. I am Chase Peckham. I am the Director of Community Outreach and Education at the San Diego Financial Literacy Center, which is the education arm of DebtWave Credit Counseling. And as always, I am joined by my cohort, Felipe Arevalo. And today we're going to talk about single and tips for managing your money. It is a little bit different than when you do have a spouse or a significant other.
Yeah. And there's some, benefits that go along with it, financial and otherwise. And, we just went past Valentine's Day. So start with that. You didn't have to worry about that. And believe it or not, you could use a lot of these things to your financial advantage. So we'll go through the different advantages and then maybe how you can, use those to help your own money situation. As with all of our presentations, I'm going to give you a little bit of the opposite side, playing devil's advocate on some of the drawbacks, because, it is important, but it's a decision that people are making. And actually, it's a decision more and more people are making. And this isn't just like people who are married, but this is married and also cohabitating. The percentage of unpartnered Americans from 25 to 54 has gone up from, in 1990, it was 29%. And in 2019, it was 38%. So more and more people are making the decision to live the single life, to not get married, but also not cohabitate with people. They're just on their own, doing their own things. And if that's the decision you've made and that's what works for you, then go for it. There's no right or wrong to any of this. And just be aware of the different financial implications that may come along with that. And I think it's just more and more people are making that decision and making that choice than ever before. So if that trend continues and there continues to increase, there's going to be more and more need for this type of presentation. All this is from Pew Research Center. So we talked about it previously, I think on one of our podcast episodes. And I think Chase had the question, was it just people are waiting longer to get married or get with a significant other? And it's actually not really the case among adults who are 40 to 54. So those older adults, as I start creeping close to that 40, saying older adults for 40 to 54 is not as fun as I thought it once was. But that unpartnered rate has also gone up within that age group from 24% in 1990 to 31%. So it's not that people are just waiting longer, it's just that they're deciding not to.
Or they get divorced or they split up and they just decide that it's single life's okay for them.
Yeah. So there's lots of different ways to get there. But if that's the situation you're in, whether you chose to or not, make the best of it, financial and otherwise. So are there drawbacks? Well, potentially. And this doesn't mean that it has to be you. Again, these are averages, so you can fall outside of these. And this is where you might want to just make sure that you're paying attention. For unpartnered men and women, there's less likely to have a bachelor's degree. There's a huge employment difference between married men and unpartnered men. And I think as long as you don't fall into continue to stay employed while being unpartnered, then you can cover that and you don't have to worry about it. That's not really a drawback to you, but that's probably the biggest change on there is the unemployment rate for unpartnered versus married. Obviously, if you continue to stay employed, then that doesn't apply to you. There's a little bit difference in women, although it's the other way around. And the median earnings also take a bit of a hit both for men and women. And so just make sure you pay attention to your career. If you're living the single life, if you're going to go unpartnered, make sure that you're paying attention to your pay and you make sure you stay employed and all that. And then you cover these drawbacks and they don't really apply to you.
And a lot of that has to do with the fact that when you are not single, you are making decisions for multiple people within the household. And so whether you decide to stay in a job that you're not super happy with because you want to pay the bills and help support the family, that's a decision that you make, where when you're single, you can say this decision really just only affects me. Now, of course, you can be single, which means and still have people you're responsible for. You could have children, whatever the scenario might be. But when you're making a decision based on yourself, there's a lot more leeway, and you can be a lot more, what's the right word? You can take a lot bigger chances.
Right. There's definitely that where you can, take maybe even bigger risks with a lot of things, personal finances, if you're just kind of fending for yourself. Whereas if you have dependents, whether you be in a relationship or unpartnered, it's something where, you may have to, it may not be just up to you or you looking out for you.
Right.
So just kind of those are the drawbacks. You've heard them. You've heard how you can get past them. Just make sure you pay attention to your career development and you stay employed, and then these don't apply to you. So are there non-money benefits to staying unpartnered? And this is according to a Psychology Today article. So there's actually no statistical significant difference in the experience of depression or stress or loneliness between those who are in a relationship and those who are unpartnered, which was a lot of times like, oh, you need someone. You don't need someone. Not everyone does. I'm happily married. I always wanted to be married, but that was my decision. That was something I wanted to do. But I think if your decision is you want to stay unpartnered for whatever reason, or it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have any of these negative, feelings that go along with it. Actually, there was a study that women who are dating actually experience more stress than those who are unpartnered. You having to worry about everything that goes along with dating, having just the whole situation. Apparently dating causes more stress. So
well, let's face it. Would you want to go back into the dating? Would you like to go back to dating again?
No.
Yeah, I don't think I would either.
It would be very, no, I'm okay.
It's a different way of life.
Yeah. And there's actually less difference in the older adults between those happiness and depression levels of unpartnered and those in relationships. So, and that's for women. For men, again, same idea, no difference in experiences and depression and stress and loneliness. And there's also, again, less difference as people get older when they're unpartnered. They've just kind of, figured out how to work it there and just do you. And a lot of these examples coming up you'll see why, if you look at it from some perspectives, you're like, okay, that could be less stressful, getting to do it all on your own. And the things that go along with it. So keep that in mind as you go, if this is your decision to go unpartnered. And again, you can change. You can go from partnered to unpartnered, or at some point, maybe you're unpartnered and something changes and you could decide, okay, I do want a relationship, or wherever the case may be. You never really know. So
very rarely is that a financial decision, though.
No, I don't think it's usually a financial decision, but there's financial implications
big time
to that decision, and pretty much any decision that we make. So going on with some of the financial benefits of being single and how you can capitalize on them. If you've decided that being unpartnered is your thing, own it. Don't worry, scream from the rooftops if you want, and just, what are some of the advantages and, how to make them work for you. You can invest more, you can save more. If you have extra cash flow, the possibilities of what you decide to do with it are endless. If you listen to our podcast that's coming out this Friday, you could fly to Rome and eat pasta. You can make big purchases and financial. None of us went to Rome to eat pasta, by the way. If you don't listen to the podcast, we're not there. But it's something where you own it and move on with what are the benefits and how can you capitalize from it.
Well, you're making decisions for yourself. Again, that's what
Right.
it comes down to, is you're making a decision financially. You get to do what you want with your capital and your time, which is money,
Right.
and everything else.
Yeah. So you can, and we just had this happen with Valentine's Day. You can avoid expensive gifts for yourself, or not for yourself, for your significant other. You don't have to worry about Valentine's Day. You don't have to worry about anniversaries, extra holiday gifts. You can obviously still gift to friends and family and yourself and whatever the case may be, but there's that extra gift expense. And some people in relationships just avoid gifts altogether, but if you don't do any gifts, then you might feel like, oh man, I got eventually, you got to do something, and you can avoid those and not have to deal with it.
I mean, you can be in a relationship and avoid that too. It just might come back to bite you.
Right.
So,
there was
better have clear communication.
Exactly. You got to make sure that it's something that you can, it's understood going into it, or whether or not the gift giving. I have another tweet we should do a podcast on about coffee and gifts, but I'll send that to you later. So you can avoid the expensive gifts that goes along with it. You could spend less money on food if you are unpartnered and you decide, you know what, I'm going to save some money this week. I don't want to go spend, I want to save money on groceries so that I can go do X, Y, Z, whatever you want to do, invest your money, save your money, pay off some debt, whatever it is. You can spend less money. If you could decide I'm going to do peanut butter and jellies as my meal prep and for lunch, and if you wanted to, you could do that. You're sitting at home one day, you don't feel like cooking, you can throw a soup in the microwave. You can obviously go out and eat nice, and buying one steak is cheaper than buying two. If you wanted to go out and eat nicer, you spend less on food. It's not necessarily a one-to-one where now there's two people, we spend exactly twice as much. It's usually a little higher percentage than that, just doubling your grocery expense.
And there's nobody to answer to. If you decide you want to go on a no carb diet, or that you want to go on an all peanut butter and jelly diet, you do what you feels right. Where when you're in a relationship, there's those discussions on what we're serving for dinner or what we're having. So those, where we spend our money, is it going to be lots of fruits and vegetables, or are you just going to go meat? There's lots of different scenarios, but when you're single, it's on you, and that's it.
Just do your thing. Yeah. And if you don't feel like cooking one night, you just don't cook. You don't have to look over to the other person and say, oh man, do you think we could skip, dinner tonight? You just don't feel like dinner, don't eat it. And you can kind of skip along and do what you want with your food. And Chase mentioned your decision making that goes along with it. So I would totally go with peanut butter and jellies to save some money. You can avoid extra travel.
Glad I'm not dating you.
Right? It would be like peanut butter and jelly again. You can avoid the extra travel. If you're in a relationship, it's really uncommon where your travel destination plans are going to always be 100% the same. So eventually you might have to take a trip that you wouldn't have, put at the top of your list. And if you have family who lives in, or they have family who lives in a different part of the country, you might have to travel for holidays. You might have to travel for, a whole bunch of different things. And I'm not saying that those in relationships don't want to do that, because a lot of us like our significant others' families, but it's just extra travel that you can avoid. If you're single, you go where you want, when you want, or if you're unpartnered, and you
don't have that pressure.
You don't have that pressure. Yeah. You can jump on a train, you can take a plane, take a bus, get in a car and drive. You call the shots, you travel where you want, when you want, as long as your other financial things are taken care of.
Phil, we got a question from one of our listeners and viewers. Is it more difficult to pay off debt when you're single?
It could be. And but it doesn't have to be. If you take advantage of all these extra little things that you're saving money, and then you put that money towards your debt, you can actually make more progress by saving money on your groceries and throwing it at your debt, by maybe not having to travel for the holidays because you don't have to go visit their family, and throwing that at your debt. You do lose the possibility of a second income from a second full income from a significant other, but then you also lose out on the possibility that they have their own debt to increase to your debt pile. So
and whether they want to help you pay it off.
Right. They may not. Being in a relationship doesn't necessarily mean that they have to help you pay your debt. They may help you with living expenses or something along those lines. But so it could, but it doesn't necessarily have to, if you take advantage of the benefits of being unpartnered, and then you take that extra funds that you're saving from these little things, and then you reallocate them towards your debts. And I think that's where the big benefit comes from, is you don't have to worry about, dating, the cost of that. You don't have to worry about all these different little things, and you roll that in to your debt pile, and you can actually make more progress that way. And just, you're in control. You want to go really hard and take out your debt in a faster time period, you do that. You want to throw extra money at your debt every single month, you can do that without having to check on someone else's goals and someone else's priorities financially.
But on the other side too, if you are in a relationship and that significant other is wanting to, because you could think about it as a household, right? So if you're single, you're your own household. If you're in a relationship, that is also a household. So there was another good question that says, what kind of savings or what kind of emergency savings should I have if I'm unpartnered? And to be honest with you, the answer is there's not a real difference,
right?
Because you should, depending on what your household income is, you should always try to save at least 3 to 6 months of income. That is, that's really hard to do. But if your income is at 100,000 per household when you're partnered, and let's say you are 50,000 per household when you're single, you still should have emergency savings based on your income. So right. It doesn't change much. The basics are the same, whether you're married or single. It's just the decision making is different.
Right. Percentage wise, you still want to have
stress is
3 to 6 months.
Pressures. Correct. Right. So, if your spouse says that I want to go home and see mom for the holidays, where if you're single, you didn't have to make that decision. Now you do. You have to weigh that positive right. versus, that's just kind of the difference in this whole situation.
Right.
All of this financially, there's not a whole lot of difference when it comes to the basics of the finances. But now you're having to make decisions based on others versus just yourself.
Right.
And communicating.
Yeah. Well, communication is big, but you still got to kind of communicate with yourself.
You got to be honest with yourself 100%.
Yeah. You avoid expensive dating. And if you want to watch a whole thing on dating and how expensive that is, you can check out our last swim live. There's a QR code to it. If you decide you're thinking, maybe I'll go back into the dating pool, whatever it is. But this was the image that got left off of last week's or 2 weeks ago. You can't just pass that off as saying, let's go to a seafood dinner because those look like maybe calamari. And,
that might be the grossest picture I've ever seen.
The hot dog squid.
Oh.
I was thinking though, for my 8-year-old and my 3-year-old, if I did this, they probably would love it.
Hot dog calamari? What the heck?
I wouldn't call it calamari, but I would say, look what I did with your hot dog. And then they'd be like, oh, this is funny. This is so great. And it's not actually seafood. So they would actually.
That's disturbing. That's going to keep me up at night.
This is the one
that might ruin me for hot dogs. I love hot dogs. That's going to ruin. Thanks a lot.
So
all those watching, we apologize.
You drop them in the air fryer and see what happens. Again, you avoid the whole dating thing. If you're out there dating constantly, it's expensive. And we did a whole presentation on it, so I'm not going to go too much into detail for it, but it's an expense, and as an expense you don't have to have if you're unpartnered. And you can take that expense and throw it at your debt. You can take that expense and put it in your savings. You can take that expense and go, go out to dinner for yourself.
Yeah. You're not
And-
trying to impress yourself.
Exactly.
Although if some people do.
Right. You have more time to side hustle. If you decide that you need more income and you want to, start a side hustle, you can go do that on your own time at your own pace. Take out a second job in the meantime while you pay off debt, and you don't have to worry about hanging out with
Spending time.
your partner, spending time. You don't have to worry about them saying, hey, you're never home or anything like that. You want to tackle that debt, go get that second job, go get that part-time job, go start that side hustle, start your own business, whatever it is.
Right.
And you don't have to worry about checking on other people or working around their schedules or anything that goes along with it. So that is a big benefit. If you needed that extra income, you don't have to worry about, working around anyone else's schedule. You want to work weekends, you work weekends. You want to work in the afternoons or nighttime, whatever it is, you can go ahead and do that.
You can do that when you're
Everything else.
in a relationship too. You just better have a discussion.
Right. Yeah. And it might be something where you never get to hang out with you anymore because you're always working or whatever.
Yeah.
And you could say yes, because we're paying off debt or whatever the case may be. But, if you don't have to worry about that, if you're unpartnered.
As long as there's an
doing your own
understanding.
thing. Right. So there's more time for you. It is important to take care of yourself, and being unpartnered is something where you can do that. You can take the time to relax. You can go get a massage. You can go for a jog. You can spend a little money on yourself that you would have spent on dating, and spend it on yourself, the things you want to do. Go out and get yourself a nice meal or whatever the case may be. But it does allow you to focus more time and potentially more money on yourself. And that's obviously very important.
Very important. And that's also very important for those of you that are also in a relationship to focus on yourself, because you can only be as good a partner if you're taking care of yourself. So as long as, like, for instance, I like to golf, my wife likes to get her nails done, whatever it might be, we understand that, we budget for it. When you're single, I didn't have to worry about that. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah. And you have more housing options. You want to move into a loft with 3 roommates like they did in, like Jess does in New Girl, or you want roommates, you want to just rent out a room in the meantime while you pay off debt. You have more housing options. You can do whatever it is you want. There's a large population or a large group of Twitter users who do like house hacking. They buy a house, they rent out rooms, or they buy a multi-unit property and then they rent out the other ones. They can do that without having, if you wanted to do that, without having to, consult with a significant other. If you wanted to do it short term to pay off debt, and you wanted to move to this part or that part, you want to leave, pick up and move to a different part of the country or a different part of town, you can do that without having to take into consideration other people's commutes, other people's job opportunities, other people's anything else. You just have more options if you wanted to change up your living situation. Listen to this week's podcast on more of someone being single and being in control of their own personal financial situation. There's no wedding expenses. Weddings are expensive. And if you've decided to go unpartnered, you can skip out on it. Obviously, you can go, there are people who live with their significant other and still don't pay for a wedding, and that's okay as well. But if you're unpartnered, then you really don't have to worry about it. And those kinds of, that could be a big expense. If someone compares someone who paid for a wedding and someone who didn't, that could be a big financial difference if someone went all out or just, spent on their wedding. It could be thousands of dollars. So if you wanted to buy a wedding
Thousands
dress,
and thousands
exactly.
and thousands of dollars.
Exactly. Even if you go inexpensive, it'll start to add up really quick. So, maybe you get yourself a cheaper wedding dress and sit down and watch TV and eat pizza with your friends, if you wanted to get that wedding experience. But you don't have to pay for a wedding. There are more financial aid options just as a reminder, if you're watching this and you haven't already and you're in school, FAFSA is due in a couple of weeks. Make sure you turn it in by, I want to say March 3rd or March 2nd, something like that. Do your research, but it's coming up. There are more financial aid options if you decide to go to school. If you have dependents, there are more financial aid options for your dependents, like children or anything like that. If you are unpartnered, as opposed to, the expected family contribution is lower, there's more financial aid options available. So that could be a benefit as well. You control your finances 100%. That's the biggest thing at the end of the day. With all the other things that we've gone over, is you're in control. You want to tackle your debt faster, you can do it without having to check on anyone. You want to reduce your living expenses, you can do that. Reduce your travel expenses, your grocery expenses, so that you can better attack this debt, so that you can better save for your future, whatever that happens to be. You're in control of your finances, you're in the driver's seat, and you decide where you want to go financially at any given point in time. And that does have some benefit to it.
That's for sure.
And you get full control of the TV. That's an added unfinancial bonus. You do get to pick and watch whatever it is you want to watch.
Or if you're my dad, you get rid of TV altogether.
Anything else?
Dad wants to know why we don't come to visit him very often. Well, Dad, after 10 minutes, not a lot going on.
Yeah, it's a, sorry, you're breaking up on mine, so I didn't hear what you said, but it's something where it's a choice that people make. For some people, it's something that they just have to, they fall into for whatever reason at some point in their lives. And, all you can do is try and make the best of it financially and otherwise. So
bottom lines is there's benefits and negatives to being in a relationship, being married. And I mean, it goes all the way around. There's no one is better than the other,
right.
Except for how you are emotionally. And that's what's important.
Yeah. So continue learning. We have our podcast, new episodes every Friday. And this episode on Friday is going to be a fun one. But we talk all kinds of different things: personal finances, dating, not dating, single relationships, communication, all kinds of fun things. Check it out. Talk Wealth to Me wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to like us, share with your friends, and tell everybody how awesome it is. And join us in the next episode, Cooking at Home. This is for everyone, partnered, unpartnered, and everyone in between. You got to eat. You don't have to eat out. How can you save money by making your own food at home? Who knows? Maybe I'll convince Chase to throw us his favorite recipe or something, and we can all share our budget-friendly recipe of the day. I don't know, but join us.
Turkey tacos, anybody?
March 2nd. Turkey tacos is like a staple in my house. So
yep, me too. And my wife's over it.
I think my kids are over it. But thank you everybody for joining us, and be sure to register and join us next time.
See you on March 2nd.